No, it's not Christmas time. Usually around Christmas time we get out the Lionel trains, but I got this in the mail from Rory Tennyson. Rory Tennyson, of course, has probably seen every video we've ever made, maybe even more. But he dug me up this Lionel book. A little token of appreciation. I've loaned him a lot of stuff over the years, a lot of videos, in fact. And he certainly paid me back. He knows what paybacks are. And I have to tell you, he must know it was my birthday last week. That's what else I got. This is from Rory, because I can't even see this. I know those of you who love Karen went wild when she saw this. She says, oh, look, it's got a... Watch this. Collectible watch. So obviously we won't wear this in the shop. Look at the train going around. In fact, when I go to train shows and things, this would be a cool time to wear this. I'm going to kind of save this. Really, I appreciate it, and we will send you out, for sure, some videos in retribution. I'll tell you, between the wallet from Pete and between this and... Look at this, there's even a certificate. I'm going to save the box. Whenever you do Lionel stuff, you always have to save the box. Look at this, all this stuff. Anyway, that's cool. And really, I really appreciate it. But I have to tell you one thing. Christmas is coming, and you know, we dismantled our village from last year, so this year we have to make a whole new village. And I look forward, like many other people, of course, that do Lionel trains, and we want to do a garden railroad next year if we have time. When you were a kid, didn't you always want this accessory, the milk car? So many neat new things. Oh, geez, I never noticed. They got a mermaid car now. The fish car, the mermaid car. So many. I mean, you know, this stuff is always light and low key. It's not supposed to be scale trains, but anybody that's, I guess, if you had a normal childhood, even if you had an abnormal childhood, you still like this stuff. And of course, they have the large-scale LGVs. Just so many things. So many things remind me of my childhood, and mine, I guess, wasn't that exceptional. Probably kind of standard, but a lot of this stuff really makes you want to be a kid again. It really does have a great nostalgia value. Rory, thanks a lot. And we're going to get back to our Venturi testing program. Now, the things that came in the mail today. This is the high-temperature epoxy. This is from Cotronics. I have the catalog and name and address, and I sent George a copy of the catalog in case he or anybody he's dealing with needs to buy some high-temperature epoxy. I also ordered some from George Spar, but he didn't have any in stock right away. This is named Duralco 4460, and it's supposed to be good to 600 degrees. Well, we're going to find out. Yeah, it says 100 to 80 parts of hardener. Okay, and if obviously you do this by weight, the cure 4 hours at 220 degrees, post-cure 4 hours, 350. See, it's got a 3-level post-cure. A 3-level post-cure means we need to do this in an oven, a calibrated oven. We have 2 calibrated ovens, one at George's, Venturini's, the anodizing shop, and if Karen's not home, of course, we can use our oven here. But a 3-level post-cure, usually what this means is this is some really high-tech stuff. This is really not stuff, you know, toy stuff, play stuff, not the kind of stuff you're going to buy from in a hobby shop anyway. And this is about, gee, I didn't even look at the price. I think it's about $50 for this little container. But what we're going to try to do is use this to make an experimental pipe, which then I hope will become one of our standby items if it works real well. And if it doesn't, this way I get to do a lot of experimenting without having to spend $100 for every pipe. Now you might think I'd be hurting for a Venturi. Well, I think we molded, I'm not sure if we molded 8,000 or 10,000 years ago. These are Super Tiger 60 ones, and they're too large, but we did have some test ones, and I was hoping I'd have a few in here. I might be able to dress a few off. Again, we're in the middle of a Venturi testing program that started on the last tape, and the problem is, Tom was going to make some up. I have 2 from George. Tom was going to run me off a few on his lathe, but I thought I had some that I just would like to know if these were going to be close. Anyway, anybody that needs Tiger 60, 51, 46 Venturis, we have a million of them. I still have a bunch of Venturis that I machined up. And these are special 315 ones. They weren't the molded ones. We got these all machined up. If somebody would like some of these or need some of these, fit right into a Tiger 60. Still have a bunch of these in stock. Finally found. I was looking for this for a long time. These are the ones that may be appropriate, and I don't know. They have a 183 hole. These are the ones we made for VMAXs. And these are molded an exact fit for a VMAX, but again, the hole is 183. So if we need to use these, I don't know if we are. We certainly aren't hurting for Venturi blanks. All we need is a lathe now. George is supposed to have that lathe in-house soon. We just haven't been able to get down to South Jersey to move it, so we're kind of... In the meantime, Tom will fill in the gap. Keep this program going. But again, we have a nice selection of these. I wish you could plant these in the ground and make them grow. And a special thanks to George for machining that special long one up. We're getting to do a day of testing with that coming up soon.
Now, yesterday what we did is we're trying to solve a problem of fuel being all over the nose of the plane, and of course we want to do it methodically. I don't want to do it by just guessing what it is or whatever. I want to do it one step by step until I eliminate all the possibilities. Now, one of the possibilities, if you look right down here, is we have two pressure fittings that we had installed on George's pipe, and I need two different pieces of tubing because one on its way to the needle valve, on the way to the uniflow pipe, is longer than the other. But I want to do this very methodically. I want to get a run with the pipe pressure. I want to then verify where that oil was coming from. My feeling was it was coming from the uniflow vent, and maybe from the swirling action of the air or whatever. It was just getting worse and worse by the day. It actually did some damage to the paint, but we'll see if that, plugging that up, obviously then if we want to run an open vent, we'll just need to relocate that vent into an area where the air isn't flowing quite so turbulently, I guess, would be the right way of doing it. Anyway, having the two pipe pressure fittings is going to allow me to get a baseline run on this, and I don't think we're going to get a lot of flying done today. The air is absolutely gone, and it's really only 8:30 in the morning, and it's already gone. But I will be able to verify a run with no pipe pressure. This is the 200 Venturi. Pipe pressure coming out of the cone and pipe pressure coming out of the constant section. And see, I mean, what I want to do is I want to do this methodically, and I want to know in my own experience exactly what's happening without having to read it third or fourth hand or whatever. Now, in the past we found out, or we kind of feel like these pinhole things in the pipe haven't made any difference at all. And this will give us a chance to just leave one of those or both of those uncapped at some future time. And we'll find out. Now, if a pinhole ruins a motor run, well, what does an 1/8 inch hole or 2 1/8 inch holes do? See, I just can't, I don't understand that part of it, but I won't pretend that I know. I need to still find out firsthand with my own knowledge.
Okay, we're coming up on near the end of gallon 7 here. And one of the things I did notice, first off, with the 200 Venturi, the long Venturi, I had to cut it down 1/8 of an inch because it was hitting the prop, basically, when I had the air filter on. Now I'll have two choices again today. I can run it with the air filter and without the air filter. And if all of a sudden oil is jumping up on the nose, well, then I can pretty much assume that it was coming out of the backsplash of the Venturi. But if on the other hand, after a few flights, the nose is nice and clean, I'll know, or can safely assume it was coming out of the uniflow vent, and then I just need to relocate that uniflow vent. It's real hawky like this. I like to do all my testing at real safe limits and safe heights, and this will not be a day for, let's see if we can pop a wing over bottom. There's always what I call the endless trade-off, and the endless trade-off is the 200 Venturi for sure has a lot more power. I mean, you could measure in RPM. It's 200 or 300 RPM faster on every prop we've had on the plane.
But the trade-off is the power gets radical in its delivery. It gets to where difficult to get it to turn on and shut off as we normally associate a stunt run. It'll give you bursts of power where you're really not looking for it. So again, there's that trade-off. Now, if the trade-off in stunt was just to make more horsepower, we'd all be running RC tune pipe 60s, the real RC ones that make 2 or 3 horsepower. That isn't the case. The case is always that you're trying to get a quality of run where the run is very predictable. The turn on and the turn off part of the motor run is very predictable. I want to also make sure that I'm not siphoning out of that uniflow vent. Again, this is the point in time where, and it's a shame we don't have a good flying day. We have really not lucked out as far as that goes, but we will get to do some testing today. And I want to take advantage of every possible day that I can, because winter is coming. Believe it or not, even though it's 95 degrees here, winter is coming. If you look up on the nose, this is now 3 flights. There is not 1 drop of oil up there. Now that's with the uniflow vent connected to the pipe pressure in the front station. So it looks like maybe what we were experiencing the other day was fuel coming out of that vent for whatever reason. And again, these are the mysteries of life. There's a lot of ways we could put a little cap on that with a pinhole. There's other ways of dealing with it. But I wanted to isolate it, and I want to do it scientifically so I know I could repeat it. Now, I want to also try, I took the air filter off, you can see the air filter's over there. I want to see what's happening with the air filter and the 200. I'm getting a lot of extra laps at the end of the pattern, so what it's telling me is the air filter is choking the engine down a lot more than I'd really want. And maybe on a true Venturi, it's more significant than on a needle Venturi. So again, what I'm going to do is just take 1 flight with the little air filter off. Of course, the needle valve will change. I also want to start running through my list of props. I have a couple more props to try, and because the air is so funky and crazy, it won't really matter, but I can hear the engine run, and it's the engine run that I'm really interested in, especially while nobody is at the field here and I don't have background noise. Belt with a Tiger, these little things add the equivalent of, say, going from a 310 to a 300 on the Venturi. But because this Venturi is a much smaller diameter, it may not equate to exactly 10 thousandths. And all those extra laps must be at least 8 or 10 extra laps at the end of the pattern. This motor has been so rock consistent, you could almost close your eyes and know when it's going to go burp, burp, burp and shut off. Now that's what has me thinking this is killing the mileage. It could be that even though we have a bigger hole, this is adding more of a restriction than the increase in the size of the diameter. So now, obviously the easy way to test this is just take this off, re-needle the engine, and we've been coming off the ground a little bit slow with this, but I can go up a little on the RPM. I know it'll take a little more RPM with the air filter off. For sure we're going to have a gain in 2-cycle power here. Again, every time I make a change here, I go back and needle the engine back to the RPM for that particular prop. In this case, we have Brian Ether's prop on. The reason is, this is the prop that loads the engine the most, except for the 3-blade. I don't have the needle valve set from the last flight. Okay, with that air filter off, you can see that all of the whole nose of the plane is covered with oil. So maybe we have narrowed it down in the fact that maybe both of them were contributing to it. This is really a mystery. But I'm going to have to put something back over the Venturi because this oil being all over the place here is really unnecessary. I guess I'll just go back to having the air filter on the airplane. But you can see what a significant change in RPM just having that air filter on is making. And ultimately we may just go back to the 183 Venturi and be done with it. But it'll be nice to know ahead of time. I don't know if you can see what, and it could be the way this is shaped. It could be siphoning out of there with the way this airflow. It's in a funny spot, and obviously this engine wasn't made for this. But we're going to have to live with the fact that it's either going to be inconvenient to choke or something of that nature. But anyway, this is just oil all over the side of the plane. This is very not typical of what should be going on here. Now I'll accept the fact that a little bit of the pipe is probably still leaking just a little bit from a couple of the pinholes that may still be in there, but that's unnecessary. So that's a problem I'm going to work on. I want to see if I have a black air filter. The black may be less restrictive. Seems like the green is giving me too many extra laps. I may have one of those little black air filters in the truck. If I do, that'll be worth an experiment too. Now, as long as I have this much of the test done, I want to try the other pressure fitting, so I'll just switch these for now. Make a longer piece of tubing. Again, it may seem like a lot of this, oh gee whiz, why didn't you just leave the old Venturian? But yet then you'd never really know. And you might, I know it makes me aggravated when I find out a year after something happened that, gee, I had that in my toolbox all along. Now, I don't have a black air filter element. I'm going to have to pick one up at the hobby shop. But it's a good tuning tool to have, the black, the green, along with, soon we'll have let's hope we're going to have a Venturi set from Tom, do some experimenting with. But keep in mind, the thing that's nice here is we can always just go back to what we had. It's very easy. Just put the old 183 back in. We know that works under the conditions we had, and maybe ultimately we'll do that, but at least this way we'll know. And you really don't know that the optimum power would have been at the best trade-off of the motor run, and maximum power would have been at 185 or 187 or something. You don't know unless you test. Wipe all this oil off, like 4 or 5 flights we've gotten already today. But I would suspect from the past that we shouldn't have any of this unless we've got something out of kilter here. Now the green air filter is just going to keep that spray down. Now if I can fly 5 more flights and not have the spray all over here, I'll know that's where that's coming from. I can isolate it one by one. Again, these things are probably problems that are unique to this airplane because it's a retrofit and because the cowling, I didn't really have this cowling designed in mind for this kind of operation. It's a problem. If I designed it, this would all be totally different. I'm kind of going to have to live with that green air filter on there until I can either get a black one or come up with, get some Venturis from Tom. But that doesn't deter me from going back. Now because the air is terrible here, we want to get on, I want to get some time on these props. I've been marking the RPM on the back with a pen, but it's wearing off. I didn't want to finalize anything. This is Bill Lee's 12-inch prop. This is the one that, with the smaller Venturi, was working well, so I would assume right now this is going to be worth trying. We've just upped the power and the RPM by about 200 RPM, so this probably will be a little bit on the strong side. Now make no bones about it. One of the things I always hear from people, oh, my engine has more power than your engine and this, and I always get wrapped up in this discussion, and it's always a controversial thing. But do you really want more power, or do you want better run characteristics? Well, a lot of times you think you can have both, but the trade-off isn't really apparent till you go back and look at the video or whatever.
or if you really listen to the motor run. Now we know that this prop, I have marked on the back, was being launched at 10.3 with the small Venturi, and we were getting some really, really nice runs. So the fact that I don't have access to a black air filter right here at the field, one thing, I'll put it on my list of things to buy, so I'll have it as soon as possible. But also, anytime you run into something that you don't have in your inventory, it's always a good idea to buy two of them. Because you know inevitably one, you'll get to the field, it'll fall off the plane, somebody will borrow it, and it's just like having none. But now we know we've added 200 RPM to the airplane. We were launching this at 10.3. With the new pressure fitting and everything on here, let's assume we're going to launch around 10.5. This will just give me a ballpark. And that's where having this real nice tack comes in, instead of having the Mickey Mouse little one that dances all over the place.
Even with the air filter on and the uniflow vent plugged up, I'm still getting oil coming out of the front here somewhere. Now, one of the things I've noticed, I pulled a cowl and looked at it. It looks like the seat where the Venturi seats to the motor may be one of the spots it's leaking. Now, on the original motor, there was no O-ring there. This one seems a little bit looser. It may be that I can put an O-ring in there and seal that up. And the motor does not have a sealed front bearing. I don't know if that has anything to do with it. Some of the Tigers that were unsealed used to do things like this. But again, that's one of the things. I'm trying to do it scientifically. I'm trying to find out. We know we have the uniflow vent capped off. It can't come out of there. With the air filter on, you're almost guaranteed that not much except for what you prime the engine with is going to come out. But there certainly is enough fuel coming out of the front here. Now, it could be that we're just running the motor, and I am running the motor harder and harder now. We got 7, well, let's see, we're that much left out of 7 gallons. And it could be that at higher and higher RPMs, you have to expect some of this blow-by. At lower RPMs, you don't need to do it. We're running the motor 10.5, 10.6, and it seems like when we got over 10,000, this is when we started to see these little oil drip and drools coming out. 10.2, 10.3, but I'm over 10. In fact, some of the runs I've just tried 10.6 and 10.7, but then I lose the motor run. It's just a one-speed motor then. Now it's, as I go through the props again, what's really happening here is I'm getting real friendly with the motor. I know the characteristics. I know what to expect when it goes up 100 RPM, down 100 RPM. So as I'm burning the fuel, the motor is getting friendlier and friendlier. But I am trying to push it and lean on it and make it run harder and harder and harder now. Now, if you had this in a 70-ounce airplane, you'd really have to push the motor. In a 64-ounce plane, there's a lot of things we can get away with. And if the plane were only 60 or 58, you could even let the motor almost be in an idle mode most of the time. But we're trying to work with 64 ounces, and we're trying to work in the 10.2 to 10.5 range as a launch RPM right now. Just to confirm, I've gone back and forth on that 2 or 3 times now in the course of the day. There's no effect. The needle doesn't change. If the only thing you change is where the pressure fitting is, it's almost a meaningless change. You don't even see a difference on the tack. So for right now, I'm going to assume that's not even a factor. And I was thinking that might be a factor in what was happening here. But I do like to keep the uniflow vent. I'll even before the day's over, try to run this one time with no pipe pressure, just to verify that isn't, and if all of a sudden there's fuel coming up out of it, I know it's coming up out of that vent then. I know it takes a long time to do this methodically, one step at a time, but this, to me, is the only way I know of that I can get real knowledge, and this is real first-hand, knees-in-the-oil knowledge. This is not something you read in a book or see on a video. This is sitting out here in the hot sun, and boy, it's over 90 now. I've been dousing sodas like I'm actually using more soda than fuel. I want to record at least one flight with this setup before I make any more changes. This is just for my reference. had a battery go dead right in the middle of the flight, so I really can't use that for any kind of reference. But I want to give the other Bill Lee prop a shot. Again, we know we're in a little higher RPM range, and we're just trying to take advantage of it.
One of the things that's nice, the two Bill Lee props run so similar. They seem to load the motor. One has a little more diameter, one has a little more pitch. You can almost interchange them, just like a needle valve setting, and either speed the plane up or slow the plane down just a little bit. In this case, it's hard to fly really slow lap times in this air. This air is getting dangerous. In fact, we may have to cut this session short. Boy, there's just ever so little less pitch in this one, but it equates to being a couple of tenths on the lap time. In this case, what I'm trying to do is get the motor up in a higher RPM range. I want to get back that, if I can, get back that little bit of a break that I had at the top of the vertical and the top of the hourglass. Again, as long as you have all this hardware and you know, for instance, right now you don't want to put on a prop that has more pitch, because it's only going to speed the plane up.
Again, from watching Paul Walker's Nats wins and having videotape of all his good flights, I know one of the things, he's almost never flying too fast, and the motor is never out of its RPM range, and the only way you get that combination is with lots of flights. And I'm getting to the point now, almost getting to the point, where I can feel something that I don't like in the pattern, or someplace where it's soft or it's going too fast, and I'll know, gee, I know what the cure will be from having gone through, we're at almost the end of the 7 gallons. And I imagine at the end of 20 gallons or 50 gallons, I'll really have a good knowledge base to work with, so that starting next season when we prepare for the Nats, we'll really have some data in the bank. We'll really be able to help people dial these things in. We've reached the end of, oh my God,
So hard here, hang on.
reached the end of
Gallon 7. And from time to time we have new people joining us on the video, or they haven't seen this trick before. This is a really good trick. This is taffender fuel, and you see, normally it's foam-o-matic. Well, one of the things I do, this is ordinary Armor All, the kind you protect your seat, sleep covers with. All you need to do is one shot of that. It's a really good trick, especially if you're flying a profile. It adds some consistency to the run. And you can see, no foam at all. Gone in one stroke of the pen. An excellent trick. Now I want to mark this up. Boy, I am sweating. Number 8. We have gone through 7 full gallons. Learned a lot so far.
Today what I got from Rich Peabody, I got one of Randy Smith's pipes for our test, and this is the pipe that I guess, since Rich has a 51, I guess this is supposed to be the correct 51 pipe. And what I wanted to do, I wanted to make up a little chart. The pipes are significantly different. And years ago, when Ken Augustine and I, of course I have George's pipe that's in the plane, when Ken and I discussed the various characteristics you could get from a pipe, other than just using it like a muffler in some untuned state, and the untuned states would be either it's way too short or way too long where it doesn't become part of the power package, what I wanted to do is make up a chart with all the given factors that go into the pipe, so if we find one that's significantly better or worse, what we'll know at that point in time is, where is the gain coming from? Is it coming from the outlet diameter, the number of baffles, the intake diameter, whatever. Now Randy's pipe is a 5/8 pipe. You can see it slides right into Brian Ether's pipe, so I'm assuming this might be technology we want to take advantage of. Now, you know, I never like to make a decision in an office environment. I like to do it at the field. So let me fill in the chart here. I got to get the grain scale, and let me fill in all the blanks here, and we'll really get a good idea of where these pipes stand. Other thing, and these belong to Rich Peabody, I got a Bowley, and let's see what diameter this is supposed to be. A 12, 4 1/4. Well, I also got a 2-blade that's 11 3/4 by 4 1/4. And of course, we'll try these stock and then try repitching them. But the real good news comes from the fact that Wayne Triven has sent me a letter, and he has a prop that he's made just a little bit less pitched than the one we like. And of course, Wayne's prop always seems to be the winner when we have these fly-offs. It's always between Wayne's prop and the Bill Lee prop. That's been modified highly, but Wayne's prop has never been touched. It's real accurate right in the very beginning. I often suggest to people, if you're going to do pipes, you need to have a box with all kinds of little gizmos and the things that we use, because you're using a constant supply of these things if you're doing any testing. So what I want to do is I've used this box from the get-go, and I've tried to keep, for instance, all the stinger parts and header parts in one bag, all of the zip ties in another bag. It just makes it convenient. And I have George's 3-blade there, and we can, again, from going back and forth from the selection of stuff, you would think it's just like a gene pool. The more things you can get into this box and test, the better chance that the good ones are going to rise to the surface. And what we really are going to start with is 5 pipes to do a comparison on. This I'm just going to work off the mandrels. To take into account that a couple inches are missing from the front of this, and this weighed out, this is the S&W pipe, weighed out at 51, but for the sake of argument I'll assume that front piece is 4 or 5 grams. I'll list this as 55 just so we have accurate readings. Okay, Randy's pipe, even with the piece in the front, is exactly the same. Okay, Brian's pipe is 75, but we'll take into account probably an inch or two of this front piece can come off. So I would say fairly it would be an adjusted weight. Okay, so the way this worked out, the ether pipe is the heaviest, at 75. The Aldrich pipe, we probably make a little allowance. We added this and there's probably some oil in it. I'd say adjusted. I'll give it the benefit of the doubt, it's 70. But see, this is where it starts to get tricky. Is this pipe has considerably more volume than this pipe, and no matter what the consensus is, until I test them all, I'm always going to. In fact, this looks like it's got twice the volume. Now it could be that this is one of the old 40 pipes. I don't know. It looks like this pipe has 2 coats of resin on it. You can't feel a weave. George's pipe, you can feel a weave. And it's probably the solidest of all the pipes. And again, by far, it's right up there with the S&W as far as having volume. It's almost exactly volume-wise what the S&W is. Now, I know the S&W runs great on 60s. So what I'm suggesting is, and Ether's pipe is probably made for a 50 to a 60. So these are all big volume pipes. But we're going to get a chance the next time we go out. I'm going to try one of the small diameter, small volume pipes. I mean, see, this is the thing. Look inside, I can't see light out the other end. There must be some baffles in there. Randy marks this where the baffle is, but because it's a 5/8 inlet, it's probably going to be a little more restrictive. And all this is mumbo jumbo until you go out and fly the plane. What I want is flight characteristics, not maximum power. Check the baffle position, and the easiest way to do this, of course Randy's is already marked, but I want to see if it has 1 or 2 baffles. But what I'll try to do in the meantime is get one of Randy's big pipes. This might really be a 40 pipe and I don't even know it. So I know one baffle is, I might have marked that wrong, because this first baffle has 2 big holes in it. Let's find that first baffle. See, I didn't want to, there's the first one right there. And that equates to the yellow line. And we'll see if we can get the second one looks like. Right in the middle. And you can see how far in it is. Okay, so this is a 2 baffle pipe. And I'll just go right through these. There's no point going on forever here. But a lot of the pipes, and typically the ones you can look in one end and out the other, they tend to be real powerful and loud. The ones And again, we're going to find out. Brian's pipe, you could look right through one end and out the other. George's pipe, two holes in the first baffle. I'm going to put a little light in here, a little tiny flashlight I can look inside. But anyway, the whole idea is there's a trade-off. All of this is a trade-off. We're not running speed engines where we're trying to make 1,000,000 horsepower. The trade-off is, in my estimation from motorcycle racing days, that when the volume gets real big and this piece of the pipe stays constant, you get a wide power band. A racing pipe almost has no flat spot. It comes to a peak and right down because you're only running at 1 RPM. One very high RPM. And you can only expect any pipe, anytime, always. There's never a time at which a pipe will tune, and I mean never, and this is factual information, that it'll tune over a range of more than, say, 1,000 RPM. So if you tune a pipe for 10.5 and you run the engine at 11.5, you're really not going to be doing much. But anyway, this will be an interesting thing. We'll keep this right in our little pipe box. And when we want to know some information, this is a good way to do it. Like almost everything I do, and of course I'll measure the IDs with a micrometer to make sure I have them accurate. Like everything, before we start making up a bunch of pipes, I want to see where the compromises are, and I'd like to, of course, take advantage of the best of all worlds. Now, when we made the pipes in 90 and 91, we made several different lengths, shorter, longer, wide, and always found that the bigger the volume was, the wider and friendlier the motor got. So we're gonna find this out as time goes by. And of course, it takes time. This takes time and energy to put one of these tables together, but it doesn't seem like they publish this stuff in Stunt News. Seems like nobody wants to publish. In fact, even the people that are on the leading edge of this stuff, that are doing it for 10, 15 years, I don't see them writing anything in Stunt News. I don't see them making videos or anything. I mean, it's like I don't know how you would find this out if you weren't willing to just buy everything and do everything. It's kind of a mystery, but I'm going to try my best to get factual information here so we can, when we start our manufacturing of pipes, we don't want to start out in left field and then, oh geez, they're all wrong. We'd like to anyway. Put a mark on George's pipe that I can see from a little bit easier. I had a scratch on here and it's from oil being in it, you can hardly see it. Anyway, good idea to have a little line up. I see what Randy does, what Brian does is they put a little mark. In fact, we're going to make this a little bit bigger so we can see it better. Another good test for Brodak dope. S&W, you don't need it. You can physically see the baffle. And Randy's already got one on there. Unless you look inside with a light, George's pipe really does have three baffles. Maybe there's another one in there. 3 baffles in George's pipe. So again, when you look in them like Brian's, you can look right in. Well, it's a lot easier than... I guess he would count there's a ring inside of Brian. I guess this would count as a third one. I don't really know. It's hard to evaluate. No, there's only 2. You can clearly see when you look down at an Aldrich pipe, there's 3. S&W, 3. Randy's looks like it has 2, but maybe there's one hiding in there. They're so close together, you can't really look through even with a light. Anyway, next thing is I want to do the outlet diameters. Now, typically, when you get a big outlet diameter, again, you're letting a lot of the heat out of the engine. Brian's is 440. Now, I always relate this to the exhaust stinger on a muffler, say. A barrel muffler. And S&W is 430. And you can see that there's some common denominators in all of this. Let's see what Randy's arrived at. I remember Billy Werwich, really way back in the 80s even, took a couple of the pipes and chopped the back off and said it didn't make any difference at all when you made this bigger and bigger. 415 for Randy. But again, it's nice to know facts. You look at some of the old Yamahas, the stingers were the size of soda straws. They really were small. 315. So that means George's is the smallest diameter at the back. But again, these are the things, if you don't do the test, you just look at them, you really can't tell. And I'm doing this off the mandrels, so this should be real accurate. On our old pipes, it was 405. So by looking at this table, and anybody that would like to have a copy of this, I'll be glad to Xerox them a copy of it if you're interested in this kind of information. You can look at some of the constants and some of the variables. Well, you figure it out yourself. But ultimately, we're going to wind up having 4 or 5 or 6 pipes being out at the field and just set them at whatever we find as the ideal. And right now, that seems to be about 6 3/4, 16 3/4, 16 7/8. Right around there, it gets real friendly. What we're going to try is just putting all the pipes in at that dimension and one by one see if there's any gains, any losses. So just having this chart available will be a big help. We're back on the field with a couple of experiments to do today. We have the Bali prop here somewhere. What I always want to do though is get my square one flight, get the only part I've changed so far here, did 2 little things. I added an O-ring under the Venturi, even though that was a relatively tight fit. I thought maybe we were leaking some oil out of there. Not sure if that did anything. We're going to know by the end of the day by how clean the nose stays. And I also made up this little gizmo here. It's just a piece of tubing with a pinhole in the front to try to keep any splashback from going up on the nose of the plane. And it seems like those were problems that we had when we were turning the engine real hard. When we're down in the 10,000 RPM range, nothing seems to be a problem. Above 10.5, I was getting all kind of little splatters and things going on up there. Don't really know what that was, but what I have now Randy's pipe has a 5/8 inlet. It's much smaller than the other pipes. It's an ounce lighter, so the vertical CG should change a little bit, but we don't have air to do stunt patterns today anyway. We basically just would like to see how this responds to the needle, what the total power output is, and maybe get some flights on that Bowley prop, see if it needs to be up or down pitched. Of course, anytime you change one thing, really what happens is everything kind of changes. But having an ounce off the bottom of the plane is a significant change. I just want to see, and maybe it isn't so critical as I really assume it is, but this will give us an idea of if we'll be able to use a 5/8 inlet pipe. Again, a 3/4 was what they normally used on pattern 60s, 5/8 on 40, so you would think somewhere in between 11/16 would be the right number, but we'll know. And if in doubt, my feeling is you should always make it bigger rather than smaller, make it less restrictive instead of more restrictive. And since we now have the resin in-house to start making pipes, we certainly would like to optimize the best design features of all the pipes out on the market. And try, of course, to make ours either competitive or even just a little better. Look at the size of this bug. Holy mackerel. Hey, bug. Yeah. You're going to go into the prop. Holy mackerel. You ever see a bumblebee fly into a carbon prop? It's not a pretty sight. Anyway, even though we can't fly patterns here, realistic patterns anyway, it's just too dangerous today. What we will be able to do is at least get some gut feelings on these prop loads and the pipe. Maybe I can switch a couple of pipes even today. Now, we've got 4 flights on this, 3 flights. And my gut feeling, as I go up through the RPM range, I haven't tried any other props yet. I've been basically working with the Billy prop. Kind of excited about getting that prop from Wayne Triven, the one he's going to hopefully send me.
can always hope anyway. Anyway, we always like, when the air is like this, if there were a contest today, we would of course put Wayne's prop right on here and hopefully blow right through it. That's always the feeling. Now, one of the things I noticed with this pipe, I've been counting laps, and even though the patterns are not pretty or whatever you want to call them, accurate, they are representative of where the motor would be coming on and shutting off. And what has happened with this pipe, the engine is running like 30 laps after the pattern. So my feeling is it's probably a little bit on the restrictive side, although it certainly is. If you didn't have any other pipe, this one would do the trick. But it seems more like a 40 pipe. I'll have to talk to Randy and see what I'm sure he's already come up with bigger volume pipes. In fact, I remember seeing one on Adamusco's plane. So we want to go right up in the RPM range up to 11,000, and then if it still isn't pulling the way we want, we'll switch the prop.
We've gone about, 5 or 6 flights at different RPM ranges to see if there'd be a gain or a loss. Well, it seems like there's a little gain in the fact that the pipe is lighter, but because of the 5/8 inlet, I don't know. And again, the jury is out on this. I don't know if it's running 30, 35 laps at the end of the pattern. It tells me that it's restricting the motor in some way, and I don't know if that's going to be critical. But right now, I need to just go back to square one to see if I've changed, if I've made a gain or a loss, and if it all of a sudden goes back to running 10 laps at the end of the pattern, I know I'm flowing more fuel, and usually that tells you you're making a little more power at the same time. Not always, but most of the time.
Now, some people may be thinking, oh yeah, well that's great that we're only using less fuel or whatever, but that's one thing I really don't want to start running an engine restricted, because I know inevitably you run into heat problems and it can just be a problem. Now, what I think the truth is, and we'll get some more testing on this later, I think the real restriction is at the 5/8 inlet, because the back is plenty big enough and the baffles seem to have enough holes. But again, these are if you don't do this test right at the field, now if when I put on, I'm going to put George's pipe back on here at the same setting, if all of a sudden I have to open that needle up, which I suspect is going to be the case, it's pretty much going to tell you the flow rate going through the pipe. We're at 16 7/8. I can use that as a gauge, the same as making a Venturi bigger and having to go out on a needle, putting more nitro in the fuel, having to go out on a needle. This is an indicator of, now for instance here, just thinking of other things, if we were running in a situation where you couldn't make the tank any bigger and you wanted to get a little restriction in mileage, this might not be the worst way to do it. But in this case, we have a 6-ounce tank in a plane, and we just want to run plenty of fuel through that motor. I want to run the full 6 ounces. I know that allows it to absorb enough oil in the course of a flight and keep the engine relatively cool. Once you start running an engine hotter and hotter and hotter, that needle gets ultra critical, everything gets ultra critical, and then you're right back to where you can't get any two flights the same. People at the field now, so it's a problem in terms of trying to get motor runs that I can hear the motor run. By the way, this tool, as handy as it does seem to be a little on the cheaply made side. I've only put about 100 zip ties on it already. It's starting to show signs of wear and tear. I'm wondering if they make like a professional model, something like that the cable TV guys would have or something. What I like about having a square one setup, right back, right to exactly where we know the last, I'll call it a square one for lack of a better word. Before I even fuel it up or start it, I know the needle with George's pipe goes out probably a half a turn. And I wouldn't want to start it and have it be in a dead lean mode. Anytime I know I'm taking restriction off the engine, it's good to start rich and then needle back into it.
avoid that startup where it just runs like a super lean for 30 seconds or so till you get it re-needled.
See, it's important for me to know that I always can go back to square one. I never want to lose that square one. Once I lose square one basically being all of George's stuff and Wayne Triven's prop. And in trying to up the ante here a little bit, well, you go down a lot of dead-end roads, but when you find one that is worth doing, it really is worth doing. And if you don't test the stuff, and if you just read about it in magazines and stuff, then you're really at the mercy of whoever's trying to convince you to do this or do that or whatever. But especially with props, motors, pipes, best of all things, test it all yourself. Then you don't have to take anybody's word for anything. And I like in doing that, then I know when I pass knowledge on to people, I'm not just passing on hearsay, I'm passing on real world knowledge. Something that they may not be able to get, right over the counter kind of. Some of this stuff is difficult to get a hold of. Hey, hard enough to get it on your own, let alone you have to believe other people. All the square one stuff that we had, I took a flight just to make sure we're back into the normal fuel consumption range. It's so important to have that square one number available all the time. Now I want to try, this is a Bali, Rich Peabody's prop, 11 3/4 by 4 1/4. These come a little bit oversized in diameter. Now I haven't trimmed it down, so this in effect is a 12 1/4. But once I get a little reading on where it sits in the RPM range, I can up pitch it or down pitch it as the case may be. Again, I don't know what prop Joe Adamusco had on his PA61, but he had basically one with too much pitch and one with not enough pitch, so maybe something that we find here would be of some value to Joe, since he's already got some of these props. Working with this Roberts over here with a problem. That is a KMB 40, and at the ratchet, you see what you did, you got the ratchet bent so that it's not rubbing on the part that has the knurls. That's the whole problem. I've heard other guys complain about this. They pinch the top, so you need to put a little bit of a kink in it, outward. See what I'm doing? Yeah. So that, see where that needle has the knurls? Now it'll rub on the knurls. You know what I'm saying? Otherwise, it was just rubbing on flat metal, and that's loose too. You got the whole thing loose. That'll give you problems. All right, so let's tighten the hole down. Just let me see if the if it's going to catch on the right spot. See, it's not catching on the right spot. That's the problem that you had to begin with. You got to bend this over. This is from being bent too many times. It's lost the metal tension. Now, once we get this in, now we got to tighten it up. Let's make sure we're on the knurls. So you should have to spread this a little bit. Now, you feel it now? Now you got the way it should be. Now let's tighten it up. Let me get that little wrench I have.
Okay, let's get a little feel of how this Bali. This is now set at the full length of 12 1/4. To be leaving with the air this bad, it just gets too dangerous to fly. But what we did a
accomplish, and it's really something that we can do on a day like today. We have some baselines for the Bali now, but clearly the winner in today's air is the combination of George's pipe and Wayne's prop. That combination in this really rough air that was the winning, our contest winning combination too. So kind of happy with that. Back to square one. After puttering around a little bit here with Robert's K&B, that needle, what happened is he had bent the ratchet straight up and it was rubbing on the stem instead of rubbing on the little ratchet teeth. So with that solved, he's ready to go back to flying. But our day is over. I don't know why he's even flying. The air is really getting bumpy here. I'm capping this off now for the end of the day so it doesn't drip in the van. What we did come into the conclusion is, of course we've been having trouble with this oil spraying up onto the fuselage, is about anything above 10,500 there must be a siphoning action, and this must be right where it high points out, because when I put that little fitting on, it's as dry as a bone. It totally has cleaned that action up. The air filter on that venturi being cut down and with an O-ring, that has totally cleaned up the bottom of the plane. In fact, it's almost the only part of the plane you need to wipe off now is the tail wheel. So it's nice to know that we have resolved something in the course of the last couple of days. Back to the shop. At James Mills of Springfield, Missouri, we've spoken so many times on the phone, I feel like he lives in my house. Anyway, this is his latest effort, and he sent a couple of pictures, which of course I'll pass on to Stunt News. And one of the problems he said he had with this ship is he didn't put enough clear, if I'm interpreting the note. And when he buffed it out, he buffed through some of the ink work and some of the lines and stuff. And we had a long conversation about it. I hope his next ship, or if he can repair some of this, maybe this would be a good case for when winter comes, sand a lot of it off, clean it all up, degrease it, and put a couple more coats of clear on it since it's not heavy already. James Mills. Also in today's mail, from Wayne Triven, and this is the plane I got to fly at Brodax, the twin-engine, semi-scale, free flight type construction. I don't know what the proper word for that. It's like double GO construction, hollow profile body, nice thick airfoil on the wing, proper moment arms. Really a nice design. Anybody that has any inclination toward a twin, this is one they should consider. Now this is just a rough sketch of Wayne, of course, is very interested in biplanes too, and boy, I wish I had the time to build one. I'll tell you, that is, if I had can you be the first one on your block to have a biplane? Boy, how many people have tried to do that and not succeeded? That's something I really would like to really try. I spent some time at the Nats talking to Dave Fitzgerald and his father, both of whom are airline pilots, and I guess they know aerodynamics a lot better than I do, but basically there's a mixed feeling. Everybody wants to see one, but nobody wants to build it, and I hope Wayne will be one of the ones that pushes the envelope. If anybody can do it, he can. Now this is really great. This is the part of modeling, I'll tell you, you can say anything you want about any part of this hobby. This is the part that to me just really makes me happy to be a modeler. Don McClave obviously got these pictures from somewhere in England that says, just sent a short note, photos taken at the Air Museum at Duxford, England. And I hope our buddies, Paul Winter and John, are going to be getting us some Battle of Britain stuff from the Battle of Britain Museum. They have really been excited about the idea of the Spitfire when they were at the house, just flipping out over it. We can see a lot of the detailing, the sliding canopy, which we made I don't know if it was a real good copy of. Anyway, from looking at some of the details, I can tell this is a late model Spit. Pointy rudder, landing gear details. Wheels, like to make a mold for something like that, to make some real semi-scale wheels for people building Spitfires. And this, of course, this shows two real important, the Zeus fittings around the cowl, the blisters for the big Griffin engine, the spacing of the screws, and we copied that to scale size when we made our own 5-bladed spinners, and the cannon detail, if you can see the cannon detail, a lot of details. Now this paint job is not one of my favorites. I like the camo jobs better, but look at the 5-bladed prop. And I appreciate Don, I really appreciate it, and I'm going to send Don out a couple of tapes, maybe get him excited about some of the stuff we're doing around here. Anyway, thanks a lot, Don, appreciate it a whole lot, and we'll see you at the next Nats. So what I'm doing, I'm checking, because one of the next things I want to test are the 3 blades. George just told me that he had a whole bunch more of these in stock. These are his that specifically made for the 51. And I got one from Rich Peabody a couple of days ago, and I'm just looking at them. I compared the pitch to exactly the same in pitch. The Bowley is just maybe a hair more pitch, and it's much thicker at the hub, so of course it's on the heavy side. But they're very close. Looking at the pitch even eye to eye, the swept area looks real close. I wanted to see if, well, we balanced them. Obviously, one of the things I want to do is verify that these are all in balance before we go run off to the flying field. Now, this one will need some balance, and I can see that. But anyway, before you run off and test the prop, especially a 3-blade, I would really want to get it balanced. Check the pitch on all the blades. I got the little gauge out. I can do that off camera. Always do to all the props, especially carbon, is get some knurls in on both faces of the hub. Seen many people have the prop constantly coming loose, constantly, and it's really dangerous. If that engine starts and then it comes loose, it can take your eye right out. We've seen even Jimmy Casal had a really bad accident with props flying off. It's knurls, both sides of the hub as we prepare, and then a final balancing. What I do, this is just one of the other props. Get an engraving tool, a Dremel tool, or even in the worst of all worlds, a file, and just file that rough, especially on carbon props. Now what I was really surprised at was how close to being balanced the prop George sent with the motor was. This one needs a little work, but that's okay. You can buy these from Randy, either balanced or unbalanced. So if you don't want to do the balance job yourself, you can have Randy do it. But anyway, here's what I'm trying to emphasize is these 2 blades, not so bad. But now I want to see these. So we're always just matching 2 against each other. Now of the 2, with this blade vertical, this is the heavier of the 2 blades. The one that's dropping to the bottom, I want to take the material off the back face of the prop, kind of equally. And this can get a little time consuming. This is the kind of stuff you want to do in the shop, if possible, not out at the field. I also like to radius all the edges off. Even with the rubber flippers, it beats the heck out of it. You want to go both ways and make this is for sure the heavier one. And just keep working on it. So you wind up, ultimately what you wind up with is that these 2 are equal, these 2 are equal, and you're always making that, whichever of the blades of the 3 is the lightest, we're working toward getting the 2 heavier ones lighter. You almost always get it to where 2 of the blades need to be lightened. We're still out on this one. Now believe me, it takes me about an hour to get one of these really right. And if you're not comfortable doing this, it's always good to let the prop manufacturer do it. You want to get it that at all 3 stations, when the blade is at 12 o'clock, all the other 2 are real close. This one's sneaking up on having it done. I also want to take these, become razor points on the corner. I just want to break those corners after I think the prop is pretty good. This is getting real close now. But if it balances at all three stations and your mirrorless center, it's a real good investment. You put one of these on a plane unbalanced, and you're just going to destroy the whole nose of the plane. You always run that risk. Tip. When you're doing a carbon fiber prop, now I don't wear a mask. I have a Wilson mask. But I don't wear it on camera because it's not the idea. The idea is if you're just doing these and you're not trying to put it on video or for some other reason talk on a phone, wear a mask. Breathing in this carbon dust is awful. You can see how much came off of that prop. Always break these corners. The first time you don't do this, you'll be in for if you're wiping off the plane and catch this on the soft underbelly of your arm. And I have done it many times where I've been just bleeding all over the plane for no reason at all. A couple of swipes with one of these Bud McKnight sanding sticks. I'll recheck the balance. Now one of my theories is, and I know a lot of people don't do this, and I do it religiously. Anytime I work a prop, I take out the gauge, take out my whole handful of props that we're using on the Jett 50 program, and recheck the balance and recheck the pitch, because when these sit out in the sun, it's been 90, 95 degrees, especially the undercambered ones that are real thin. They tend to just have a memory and go back if you leave them out in the sun long enough. Obviously, the best idea is don't leave them out in the sun. But having a pitch gauge, I can just, in a matter of 30 seconds, check them, and if they're starting to vary, correct them. And especially with the 3 blades. You don't want to have a 3 blade where one blade is walking its way back from being in the sun and two, you just get nothing accomplished then at the field. Anyway, now we're ready. We have 2 3 blades to test. They look about equal in pitch and diameter. They're exactly equal in diameter. So it'll be an interesting test. Props that I've checked. The ones that never go back are the ones that have the memory molded right into them. Some of the props, the most specific one is Wayne's prop, it never changes, even though it has a lot of undercam, because it's molded in. When you start heating and bending them, yeah, that gets you what you want, but you always have that chance that on a hot day, some of that memory is going to come back. So that's what's nice about having a gauge. And you could run these right through, and it only takes a couple of minutes. It's really cheap insurance, because a lot of times a prop will lose its pitch or gain pitch, and here you are doing other thing. This one stayed perfect. But it only takes a minute to check them. It's just one of these 1-minute things. And then at least you have your square one back. Now here's one. Here's exactly what I'm talking about. One of these that, even though we have the gauge, we've gained pitch in one blade. See how much pitch we've gained at the leading edge? This is probably one that's been on the plane a lot and sitting out in the sun, so we'll need to true this one up. And after doing it 3 or 4 times, it usually stays where you put it then after that. Alright, all the props are done, the pipes are done, and we just need a day of some air that we can fly in instead of going around in circles. Yeah, I had spoken to Bill Zimmer, and the good news is Bill is on the mend. After a tough summer with having a stroke and recovery, of course, so we wish him well. I had mentioned to him the last time we spoke, I saw this thing on our TV, this guy making a plane in his cellar, and he really never made a plane before or something. And he said he could do it in 30 days. And I said, boy, it sounds like, like something I'd like to do, is see if I could make a real plane in 30 days. And I never could find out, even though Karen had called the station, where to buy the videos. Well, anyway, Bill went out and bought them. So here we have, there's 3 tapes, I don't know how long they are, but in a note, Bill said it's one of the best videos he's ever seen. And funny, the guy shows all his mistakes on video, doesn't edit them all out, so he looks like he's better than he really is. Hey, and he gave me this too. It probably lists hundreds and hundreds of other interesting things. But anyway, again, I've said it before. I love sharing the stuff. I love sharing the adventure of the world of stone. We're going to be watching these over and over. I'm sure we're going to have several people borrow them, and I have to really keep track of it because these have to go back to Bill. But this is a great set of videos, and I've seen the last part of this already. It'd be nice if they gave you a phone number. PBS Home Video, 1320 Braddock Place, Alexandria, Virginia, 22314-1698. Toll free, 1-800, see, take it long enough, 645-4727. You might want to pick up their free catalog. Look, it's on the cover of the catalog. And I know these are fun to watch. These are the kind of videos you could watch them 17 times. They are really fun. This guy really... I know at the end the tail wheel fell off the plane when he tried to take off, but I haven't seen the rest of it yet. We'll be watching them, and of course we'll share them with anybody who promises to give them back. Last thing in today's mail, I got these Venturis. These are from Tom. These are for test purposes. You notice one is longer than the other, so I still don't know if it's going to be significant to fill in the cavity under the Venturi or not. They have a little bit different flute tapers, a little bit different diameter. So we will have something the next time we pull the front end of the plane apart, or next time we want to do some tuning. In the meantime, I don't know if we're going to have any air out at the field. It doesn't look good. It looks like it's going to rain any minute, but I would like to just take a chance that we can get a couple of flights in with the old setup with the air filter, and then take the air filter on and off and see how much of a significant difference. Because that's part of it that I haven't done yet. I would just go up the field and see if, but this is Tom's address, and he's been helping me along the way. Super nice guy to, and by the way, these come the next day. It's my kind of service, my kind of guy. Tom Hampshire, good guy.
It was supposed to rain all day today. I guess it isn't going to rain. Anyway, first flight of the day, I wanted to see how this is the 205 Venturi, how it was going to be without the air filter. It just turns the engine into way too powerful, way too radical for my taste anyway. This is almost reminiscent of a pylon engine here. It's very, very powerful. But we can always go back to this. But I want to get back to my square one here. I want to I have Wayne Triven's crop, the Venturi with the air filter. Now let's see what that does as far as cutting down the power. It seems like on these kind of Venturis, the result is more dramatic. Boy, it's a pain in the neck getting these on too. When you have a Tiger 60 with a 315 hole, you put an air filter on, it acts like a 305. What happens with these is when you put an air filter on it, it almost runs like a choke on the engine, and it starts running a lot of extra laps. Well, they ought to make these easier to put on. Anyway, my feeling is right now that this Venturi, no matter what, is going to be on the big side. Going to be too big to ultimately use, and we're going to wind up back with the original one. Now, what I even tried in the course of this day of testing here, haven't got a lot of flying today, and there's no big deal because the air is not that good anyway. But what for sure is with that 205 Venturi, we are definitely overpowering this airplane anyway in this combination. But I tried it with the air filter on. The restriction brings it back to where it's just a little less powerful with the air filter on than it is with the 189. Now with the 189, it seems like as I go back and forth here, I keep wanting to arrive at that 189. It seemed like it had the nicest run characteristics, and it doesn't take much diameter to get what I call radical power, where it just doesn't come on and shut off, and it'll keep running right through the whole vertical 8, not shut off at the bottom. But it seems like it's relatively sensitive to that Venturi diameter. 10 thousandths just changes the whole characteristic of the motor. Again, for a bad air day, we're just lucky we're getting some testing done. We're not wasting time where I would really be wanting to fly stunt patterns. Oh, I didn't mention, I burned out the first of the Thunderbolt plugs. You know, this is actually the second of the Thunderbolts that have been in here, but George is threatening to give me one of the 4Cs, and I noticed K and B.
Well, with the 205 or the 200, both of the Venturis, even with them, you can see I've been running pipe pressure, no pipe pressure. It's just the power is too hard of a two-cycle power band, I guess. Now what I wanted to do, because I have about an hour left and it's really gotten hot, I want to try, I have never had Brian Ether's pipe on a plane. This belongs to Jack Young. And I spoke to him today and he said I can cut it and tune it however I want, so I'll probably be able to get 4 or 5 flights on Brian's pipe, just get a gut feeling for how it runs on this motor. I'm just making sure that I have the first baffle, and you can see the mark on it, the first baffle. And I want to start with Brian's pipe because I'm going to be trimming it. I can cut it maybe an inch longer and then just start shaving it until I get that hard pipe rattle again. Now with Brian's pipe, what I want to do, I want to start at 18 inches and go in 1/4 of an inch at a time. Because it's a lot easier to start with the pipe long and then shorten it than it is to make it too short, and then you need 2 little pieces up in the front. I made the front good and rough with sandpaper, so hopefully it'll be no problem. But of course, when I send this back to Jack Young, at least I can give him some idea of how it worked out tuning-wise. I think it is, Robert. It's hot. We're going to be flying in the nude here pretty soon. Okay, we'll start at 18. Let's see how this works out. Handy tip I found out a long time ago. If you're going to do things shortening and lengthening pipes up, nothing beats a good old-fashioned hacksaw with small teeth. I take those little crazy Zona saws and it takes you a half an hour to saw the pipe in half or saw the aluminum. When you have this, bingo. That motor needs a full turn open on the needle to run this pipe at 18 inches. Now, every once in a while you stumble across something that just blows you away. While I had run Brian Ether's pipe on the bench and just played with it back and forth, I never really had it in a plane until right now. Brian Ether's pipe has 2 characteristics that are very unlike all the other pipes. Number one, it uses the fuel up by the hourglass. In the middle of the hourglass, I'm starting to get burp, burp, burp and running out of fuel. So it's really the king of no mileage. Not that that's a negative thing, but you would have to know ahead of time and put, I would say, if you're going to use a Brian Ether pipe set at between 17.5 and 18, you had better have a 7-ounce tank in a plane. Now it's just funny, Gary Tultz was just telling me, just yesterday in fact, that he has a Jett 50 and he has trouble getting through the pattern. I wonder if he has a Brian Ether pipe. I don't even know. It'd be interesting. I'll call him back as soon as I get home and find out. Anyway, I attribute that to the fact that the tail cone, may as well walk over there and get the plane while I'm yapping. See, I try to document this so by the time I get home I don't forget it. Now, there's no pressure fitting on Brian's pipe, and I didn't put one of those little rubber things on so you can see the whole bottom, the whole back of the fuel is soaked with fuel. But here's my thought. If you were going to have a plane, say a 70-ounce plane that needed all the power it could get, this is a real nice wide range. And it seemed to be right about at 17.5, it was real happy. I had it at 18 and then 17 3/4. At 17.5, it just came right onto that rattle in the pipe and that hard 2-cycle. But it really does use the fuel like you can't believe. But I want to finish out the day using this pipe, and I'll just skip some of the level laps because basically what I feel there's some real potential here for somebody. Now, probably the real reason is this pipe has, you can see in one end and out the other, it's probably almost no restriction. And it is louder than all the others by some amount. I don't know the amount. I'm going to put one of those rubber duckies on the end of this and see if I'm sure that'll add some mileage to it at some price. Anything you do to restrict the engine will add to mileage, that's for sure. I had to open that needle a full turn on the first time I flew it. And by the way, it's running right now, as strange as this seems, with the 205. That big opening and that, I mean, you have some tremendous power here. It's spinning Wayne's prop in a hard 2-cycle like it's, you know, a 10-inch prop. So this was very eye-opening. Even if we just run into 1 or 2 of these things in the test program, it'll be a big help.
At the end of 3 flights, we experienced a mechanical failure in the pipe. A piece of the pipe literally came out of the plane. And I'm not sure where this is supposed to go. I really don't want to make an invalid test here. And because this is not my pipe, I don't want to go sawing into it. But one thing would be fun to do. See now, I'm sure Jack Young wouldn't mind if I did this. Is I'll try running it without this little baffle and see what happens. I really can't envision what this is supposed to be doing. Okay, I see what it is. This pipe only really has one, it looks like, maybe it has two. It looks like it has one baffle, and then it runs into this chamber and runs around and comes back. But this may be, I don't know. I don't know how to hold it. Oh, you know what I can do? I can put that in and just confine it with that rubber. Maybe that's how that's intended to be done anyway. See, I don't have the literature that usually comes with this. That's interesting though, that maybe you can run this pipe with that piece missing. But boy, if you just had a 7-ounce tank in a plane. Now here's another thing that I'm just too tired to try it right now. I don't want to change another Venturi today. What I can do is I can try this pipe setup with the 183. 189, I mean, the original Venturi that comes with the engine. And that may be a surprisingly nice setup. But at 17 and a half, that's really where it came into its own. When I went down below 17 and a half, it started getting that raciness to it. Here, I feel like I could die. Woo! Anyway, I want to continue this. Now, one of the things we do have is we have 2 choices. We have the big 120 size, which will be less restrictive. But since we're looking for a little more mileage, maybe what I'll do is I'll put the smaller of the 2 on here. Maybe we can get it to fit. This really doesn't want to fit on here. These usually restrict and exhaust enough that you can, especially on a Tiger 60. Oh, there we go. Okay. Now with this on here, it'll keep some of the oil off the plane and keep that brass thing. I got to put a zip tie on that too. Anyway, now let's see how much the mileage increases. Let's see how far into the pattern we can get with that on there. And maybe it was designed to be that way. See, if I had the literature, it would be a whole different ballgame. Have that idea in your mind about restriction, either in the Venturi or the exhaust. When you restrict it, you're going to get better mileage. And in the case when you restrict the exhaust, you're going to get more heat. Now, it would be nice to see how much, and maybe I'll keep track of this accurately from this point on. I've been just doing this rough. Get an idea as to how long it runs without the stinger, with the big stinger, with the small stinger, so we can get a gauge on. This is just a way you can fine tune here without doing a lot of work, without even going back to the shop. Remember, and I always say this, I'm entertained by this because of my motorcycle racing background. This kind of stuff, constantly tuning, is very entertaining to me. Some people don't find it entertaining, and that's the purpose of trying to test all this stuff ahead of time. Is the person who does not find this, another thing I didn't even think of, we could put this is very unrestricted, you almost can't tell if it's on. But some of those little rubber things, the ones that are made for 40s, just choke a motor to death. If you find this kind of tuning, much like tuning road racing motorcycles, if you find it interesting, well, wow, you're in. Your dream will come true. But if you don't, then you want to have some source of information. I don't know that source of information, it might exist somewhere that I don't know about, but I haven't seen it in my travels. And I would like to know at the end of this test program, maybe a month or at the end of the season, exactly where all our square ones wound up. And I think with the props that Wayne is hopefully going to make and Dennis Toth is going to make, and some of this other stuff, George has more 3 blades to test. We're hopefully going to eliminate this part of it where you're all greasy and dirty and slimy and you can't drink enough Pepsi. You make yourself crazy. But it's these hard-fought hours in the trenches that somewhere down the road, let's hope, you'll just have that little competitive edge that you need to do what you want to do. The Walker Cup is always won by little tiny slivers of advantages one way or another, or bad needle valve settings or whatever. And knowing this ahead of time, it's material, it's in the data bank, you can put it right in your data bank and use it right away.
I want to shoot one run just for my own records with the Brian Ether pipe with the little stinger. Now listen to the motor run, because this pipe is a little bit louder and a more clearly defined motor run. You can hear it a lot easier.
terrible. No matter where I do a maneuver, it's all over my face. Anyway, but I'm coming home from this at least satisfied in the knowledge that I have added one more dimension to this program, one more little knowledge base. And I'm so hot, I feel like I'm in Texas.
That's the point of everything. If you can just pick up one good little addition to your program, either by watching tape or come on out here and sweat. It's something interesting, and I report the good news with the bad. The little piece of glass in this tack is loose now, so I don't know. I'll call him up, of course, and I don't know if that's just something that's loosened up inside. Nothing's loose out here. It hasn't been dropped, and it's still working, but just annoys me that for $80 there's a piece of glass floating around in a tack. That's what honest reporting is, the good news and the bad news. Now is when the fun begins. Now that we've found something that's made a dramatic difference to the power output, we've been waiting to test the old 3-blade. Anyway, that last flight, I just wimped out of doing that. I just knew it was running out of fuel. Anyway, with that pipe, my suggestion is put a 7-ounce tank in your plane if you like the Bryan ether. And if I kind of like the little extra noise, I can hear the motor running. I hope you can hear it on the video too, but be a good time to get a run on. We have 2 3-blades, one from George, one from Randy. Let's run them. And this is really the most power this engine has ever put out in 8 gallons of fuel. Now this will be interesting because we still can pull out the head shim. We have 2 10,000s gaskets, but it'll be interesting to see. Now this, again, with the original setups, this particular setup really overloaded the engine to the point where it's difficult to fly in this rough air, and it is rough today, trust me. I'm moving around like a circus clown out there. Okay, next flight, both head shims, ether prop, George's 3-blade.
Well, you can see the mileage from that. You definitely can see the mileage, and it gets too hairy at the end of the flight. So the choices would be obvious. We need to either restrict the motor or run the motor harder and hotter. I don't want to run it harder and hotter. And I know Georgia loved that flight. It's nice and slow. It was too slow for this field. It gets too dangerous to fly. Side of this, I still think, and George is in agreement, that this prop needs to be trimmed some, but I've been living with the hope that I could eventually get the motor to reliably spin at least this motor in this plane. Well, I don't know. There's not much left of that 8th gallon of fuel, and I'm roasting up here like a lobster in Texas. The Bali is just, well, it's probably going to load the motor even more. It's got wider blades. It's got more pitch, so I still want to try it once, even though I don't have a lot of hope. I'm sure this is going to have to be de-pitched, but because it's the end of the day, and I have a good sense of humor. And again, a lot of times, now this prop has more pitch. It may be that it'll run real efficiently at a lower RPM range. And it's like the Brian Ether pipe. You don't want to just go by looks and say, I'll eliminate that out of the program. You really would like to, at least I would. I love having first-hand information. I don't have to depend on somebody slanting it or spinning it in the direction they want. And it's easy, just buy one of everything. You could be your own worst enemy like me. Anyway, I just feel like this is still a full 12 inches. I'm going to have to wind up cutting 1/8 of an inch off each blade before we really get this to come to life. But I'm not going to do it yet because I still don't have the time to get the head gasket out of the motor. With that little extra power, we may just get on it. But you see how slow the flight is. It really does get just a little wimpy in spots, and with that little bit off, it'll unload into a higher RPM range. Maybe it'll just be all right. Certainly are a lot of people in the hobby, I think, realistically, that have a lot more flying talent than I have. But I don't think there's a lot of people that work harder at this or longer. And the reason I say that is because I'm so demanding of having first-hand information. A lot of times, it takes me a long time to settle in on what my opinion is of something. And I don't like that opinion to be distorted. Now, like that Brian Ether pipe, the first time I put that on an engine, I said, oh man, too loud, not going to like that. And whatever the reason is, it doesn't really sound that loud in the air when the plane is flying. It's louder than the other pipes, but it seems like it's just very, very user-friendly, extremely user-friendly. And that goes a long way. If you don't get the needle valve wrong, with a wide power range and a wide needle, you don't have to be the best flyer all the time to win. You don't need to start on the first flip. You don't need to start on the second flip to win.
so far is George's prop needs to unload just a little bit more. We can do that by trimming some diameter. That'll let it unload, run a little faster. So without changing the pitch, I can change the RPM range it's running. And if you look real close at that last flight, I'll bet the thing was under 5 seconds a lap. But if we ever have to fly in a real hurricane or something, that'd be the prop of choice. That comes up near where Wayne's prop is as far as line tension goes. Problem is that prop probably has just a little bit too much pitch. So what I'm going to do is when I go home tonight or tomorrow, get a chance to do my 3-blade, I'll make a gauge, measure an inch out from the end. I want to be just a little more pitch than this prop has and a little bit less than that. It's called interpolation. I want to be right in the middle of the two, and by marrying the two together, I should get the best of both worlds eventually. Thing to remember is when you're doing this kind of testing, you really can't try to get low wing over pullouts and real low bottoms or anything like that. What you try for, I want to concentrate as much as I can on the feel, the sound, the line tension, all the little variables in the plane. And I want to be safe more than anything, because a lot of times I'm not even thinking about the flight. I'm thinking about the sound of the motor, the fuel consumption, or something that I want to try on the next flight. But if you don't have these long, drawn-out days in the sun, you don't really get to check everything. And it's hot out here, believe me. Well, that's what's left of gallon 8. I'd like to get one more motor run for my own record. I want to turn the sound way up, and I want to basically listen to the motor run. This is the end of the tape, and we'll just let this flight run out to the end of the tape. Thanks for joining us, and see you on gallon 9. Hope some of this information is helping some of the people watching it. I know we already have 3 or 4 people calling almost on a daily basis to see how this program is going. this has been one of the most productive days we have had, and we still have a lot more stuff to test. What happens here is you just run out of enthusiasm and energy about, I don't even know, it's about 4 o'clock, and I've been here basically all day. So our box of parts grows and our pipes grow, and there's just an endless supply of stuff to keep organized, keep track of. But the end result, I think even the, I don't know, the most skeptical person would agree that we've got basically the real slow motor run in the 9,500 RPM range, and we've got the real, I don't know what you would call it, the killer hurricane run, and we've got everything in between, and little by little we're getting it. Well, the next thing I want to do, I want to put a little bit smaller venturi in there. I want to get my mileage back. I really only have a few laps at the end of the pattern, but we're starting to accumulate all the parts that we need to do this fine-tuning. Well, thanks for watching again. Strager has had a long and illustrious career, and we are currently working on a real nice construction article for Model Aviation. Here's a nice picture from Pascal and Gerald Champ. Hey. Hey. Hope to see you soon, guy.